It was about 9 months ago when this podcast, The Church We Dream Of, started. If you've listened to that episode, you know that I didn't really have a plan for where we were going. I knew that I wanted to have conversations about what's happening in the American Western Church, and I wanted us to be able to open our eyes and see it for what it is instead of having inherited assumptions for what it is. And it's really been a journey. Each episode, each interview has taught me something, and I hope that it's taught you something. As we're coming up to the last quarter of season one, I wanted to shift gears a little bit because we've just come off the end of months of conversations around problems that we see in the church, historical impact for where those problems potentially came from. We've talked a lot about how to study the Bible, and there's a lot of work that goes into learning how to study the Bible. I'm realizing we've put so much on the table that I want to go back to the beginning and that first instruction, that first goal, which was to learn how to sit with the reality of what this is without slipping into being overly critical, without self-condemnation. This was always meant to be a conversation that led to some kind of transformation. And I said at the beginning that I wasn't sure how we were going to get there. And I have really, really been chewing on how do we get there? How do we get there? What does it look like to take practical steps? Doing lots of research because talking is good. Talking is important. Talking about what is going on, like we have just done with these last three fantastic interviews. Our interview with Sam on how to live in chaos and feel the complete presence of God. Our interview with Dr. Amanda Anderson, who talked about what shame can look like even in high functioning roles. And of course, our interview with Billy, where we talked about not just race in the church, but essentially differences in the church. What do we do when we encounter someone who's different than us in church? How do we reconcile that difference? And I remember saying to Billy at the beginning of his interview, I said, we don't have to have an answer for how we get there. But I think in all of this work, there is an answer for what we can do next, what comes after identifying the problem. And I think that's where we want to go today. After you've identified a wound, you can start to heal. Before you identify a wound, you can't. If someone doesn't think they have a broken leg, but you're begging them to come to the hospital, they're not going to understand why. And if you offer them treatment, it's not going to have any relevance to them, especially if they've shut off the pain signals to the fact that their leg is broken. From my perspective, the thing that we're wrestling with the American church is like that. And what we've been doing for the last 9 months is admitting that there's something that's broken. There's something that we could do better. The next step after admitting that there is a problem is not actually taking action just yet. The next step is embracing the healing process. This is like the disclaimer episode. This is the information I would present to a client in an intake session where they've signed up for therapy and they're very excited about all of the things that are going to get better in their life. And I have to give this disclaimer ethically that we come to therapy to get better, but along the way, we usually feel worse first. Usually the thing that we're trying to rebuild looks like it's falling apart before it gets better. If we're really going to lean into the problem, if we're really going to take steps towards building the church that we dream of, we're going to need to have a moment, a pause to consider what is that process going to look like and have realistic expectations for the journey. The Western world has sold this idea that healing can be and should be instantaneous. I'm guessing it has something to do with the fast-paced industrial revolution that change the way we perceive time and efficiency, and then eventually change the way we perceive relationships and relationship value. And it led into how quickly we expect problems to be solved. When I was born, my mom bought me encyclopedias. She bought encyclopedias from that door-to-door salesman because she wanted me to be able to research stuff to learn. Now at the age of 35, not only have we had the birth of the internet and a technology revolution, but we are now on the very beginning of the use of AI. And those encyclopedias, while valuable, are obsolete to our daily functioning because the tools that we use now are much more efficient. What took us maybe decades to learn before can maybe take a couple of hours now. So it creates this gap between the reality of how nature works in tension with technology and the pace that we can accomplish life at with technology. There's also a big disconnect from the pain involved with any kind of progress. If you have ever tried to dig a hole, you know that there's pain involved. If you want that hole, you're going to have to put your whole body into it, and it's going to take time. and you're going to run into rocks, different soil textures, and all sorts of things that are going to make digging a hole more challenging. If you want to get something done with technology, all you have to do is click. There's such a micro amount of effort in that. Sure, we put thought into what we're clicking on. Sure, we decide how we're going to click and what we're going to build, but our bodies are essentially frozen and still, operating outside of the natural world of creation. We are immobile and creating, as opposed to the rest of history and the rest of the world, the rest of nature, which creation requires movement. It requires transitions and pain that just make total sense when you're used to doing anything in the natural world. But I think as a society, at least in American Western culture, we've largely moved away from experiencing the pain of existing. Even with modern food delivery, with the plethora of restaurants that we have to choose from, the fact that we have grocery stores, the pain and the reality of what it costs to live and to grow is largely hidden from us, and the resistance is made very smooth. However, it's not possible to erase the tension from the healing journey when it comes to your nervous system and really any sort of human relationship. I was talking with a friend recently. She is about to become a mom for the first time. And I was reflecting on the fact that there is no book that you can read that is going to give you the inherent, tangible, lived experience of that first year of parenting. It doesn't matter how much you study or how much you prepare. You can have all the book knowledge you can have clicked all the links, you can buy all the stuff, you can get it into the room. But at the end of the day, there is nothing that makes you a parent except for parenting. It is 100% a lived experience, and there's no other way to gain that knowledge except through the experience of raising a child. And healing is the same. There's no way to get the benefits of healing without going through the 100% tangible, physical experience of healing. What is that feeling that we're going to be having while we're healing? It's not going to be a straight line, and it's not going to be tidy. It's not going to be super controlled. Have you ever tried to grow a garden? Some of you are really good at this. It's something I've been dabbling in for a couple of years. And when I tell you the way that seeds will not cooperate with me, I just don't understand. I will plant the seeds at the right time, the right way, in the right soil, nothing happens. The next year, they're growing like crazy. I can't get them to stop. I know as gardeners, you know exactly what my problem is, but bear with me. I planted a seed and expected immediate results because that's what it said on the package. But in reality, it took a full year for me to get the results that I was hoping for. If we want to heal the church we dream of, that is going to be a lot of our journey. We're going to do the right thing. We're going to plant the seeds. It's going to be the right time. It's going to be the right way. And then maybe it's going to look like nothing's happening. Nothing is changing. And maybe it's going to take a whole year or more for us to see the results that package said it was going to give. And hopefully we have some expert gardeners in our lives to encourage us along the way that those seeds will grow. Hopefully we'll have mentors and people, spiritual advisors, to encourage us in the investing, in the planting of seeds that will be transforming the church into a place where we can truly be our authentic selves and where we really are a welcoming place for the world. They have the tangible lived experience of a lifetime that tells them it will eventually happen, and they can invest that in. So the first thing that can happen on the healing journey is you can follow the instructions, you can do everything right, and it looks like nothing's happening. But that is not failure. That's a normal response to the organic world, because God knows. He knows what he's doing. He knows the work is deeper than the 4 to 6 weeks that we want that little sprout to come up. The other thing that can happen is it can be terrifying. One of the reasons we're going to feel fear as we move forward in this journey of building the church that we dream of is that fear is directly tied to shame. And remember how Amanda talked about shame tells us that we are the problem. And shame is functionally very efficient. It's very solutions focused, if you will. Shame is very good at keeping problems at a distance, and it's going to make sure that any risky relationships or any risky realities are going to be difficult to access because your mentality is going to be, I'm not worthy of those solutions anyways, so I shouldn't even engage with them. And letting go of the idea that you are in fact worthy of connection, of wholeness, of healing, of dreams that God has put on your heart is a terrifying experience because your nervous system chose shame for a reason. It was less scary to believe that you're the problem than it is to confront a system and say, wait a minute, maybe this system isn't what it's supposed to be. And maybe I'm supposed to be part of making it better. Maybe you're not. Some systems you're not. Some systems you just move on by. But in the case of building the church that we dream of, I think there's room for all of us to contribute something to making it a better system. And in order to do that, we're going to have to confront the shame that says we are the problem. And I mean that on every spectrum. If you're the person who's attending church, if you're the person who's leading the church, if you're the person outside of the church, every single one of us is going to have to embrace the reality that at the end of the day, we as individuals are not the problem. And that collectively we've made choices that are not providing the solutions we hope for. That's a different thing. Saying this solution isn't working in the way that I hoped is a very external thought that has nothing to do with shaming yourself. It's as simple as acknowledging this didn't work. Let's try again. Let's try something different. But if we internalize shame, we say, I didn't work. I'm the problem. There is no other solution. It removes all creativity and possibility for moving forward. So the second thing that we might feel in this journey is fear. Fear of admitting that we are not the problem. And moving forward is going to require a bigger worldview. A third thing that we're going to run into in this process is trauma responses. It is something that we discussed early on in The Language of Trauma, one of the early episodes in this season. And we talked about how trauma tells us not to go this way because that way is scary, because that way hurt us before. As we're moving forward to try and build the church that we dream of, we are going to encounter emotion signals that tells us this way is very dangerous. We've been here before. Don't go again because you're going to get hurt. Billy referred to the relational patterns that I refer to as trauma responses as preferences. Preferences is a very gentle word to reflect a concept of a very rigid boundary. If we have preferences that exclude people without cause, with only our assumption of their nature, with an inherited narrative about the harm they're going to cause us that's not tied to their actual behavior, a preference is much deeper than I'd like a red shirt or a blue shirt. A preference is a rigid boundary, and rigid boundaries are usually rooted in trauma responses and trauma histories. So when Billy was talking about how difficult it is for some communities to move out of preference and into connection, he was alluding to the concept of trauma healing work. That in order for us to open up our church doors, by that I more specifically mean our hearts to each other, we're going to need to engage with our trauma responses, our relationship histories that have told us that we're going to get hurt in this relationship. And we're going to have to lay down our preferences around what keeps us safe, what's healthy, what's right. And I loved how Billy talked about we can't know the right way until we've tried all the ways. I think that's a secret ingredient that is going to be essential to moving forward with the church we dream of. It's the willingness to try new things, the willingness to make mistakes and not internalize that as shame, not allow it to lead to disconnection in relationship, but turn it into an adventure, a fun thing that we get to do. It makes me think of the episode where we talked about how in the Hebrew culture, when they read the Bible and came across something that they didn't know, they would jump for joy because that meant that God was going to teach them something. My husband was recently talking to me about how the phrase, when we put something at Jesus's feet, is not so much about releasing it to him and no longer having participation or control over that thing. When we put something at Jesus's feet, in the context of the original history of the phrase, what we're actually doing is saying, Jesus, teach me about this thing. I'm putting this thing at your feet, and I'm now expecting that you're going to engage in discipleship with me, in relationship with me about this thing, so that I can steward it better, so that I can more efficiently communicate who you are through this thing. All of this stuff is pretty easy to put into a bullet point list and just say, but doing it is really hard. And that's why it's not often chosen. There's a reason that we have stuck with the model of church that we have. It works on a certain level, and changing it is going to disrupt a lot of things. It's going to bring a lot of chaos, if you will. It's going to bring a lot of not sure what's going to happen next. And we're going to need a lot of Sam energy, a lot of patience, grasshopper energy. We're going to need the courage and humility that Sam modeled, where we allow God to use us however he's moving. She said, we never know who it is we might be influencing and who we might be helping. And I take that mentality every time I get any chance to sit down and talk with someone for more than 5 minutes, especially if there are not kids running around at our feet so we can actually hear each other talking, I am always assuming that this conversation has eternal implications. We might be just talking about groceries. We might be talking about their biggest life dreams. It doesn't matter. Whenever I get this uninterrupted attention with someone, I'm assuming that God cares about that person and wants me to invest in them in that conversation. And I'm always listening to the Holy Spirit to say, what is it? What do you want me to invest in this moment, in this conversation? Because I don't believe that I ever meet anyone by accident. Every encounter I had with a human is with another person who's made in the image of God. And that means that that person has an eternal calling on their lives and an anointing to steward the body of Christ. And their stewarding of their mission blesses me. Community can be very selfish in a good way. I will only be as successful and as whole as the person next to me. If we flip it upside down and go from like, I have to be the best, I have to be the strongest, I have to be the one who's most enlightened, and start thinking about, I can only be as enlightened as the person next to me. So I'm going to pour everything I have into everyone around me, everyone around me. They have giftings that I don't have. I'm going to share with them everything that might be helpful to them in their calling, in their mission for the kingdom, because the kingdom will only be as good as our ability to invest in each other. Here's a really beautiful example of what this looks like. I was having a hard day a couple weeks ago, a hard parenting day, if you will. And when I'm having a hard parenting day, when my husband's at work, I know that I can text him and he'll talk me through it. So I was texting him and he was talking me through my hard day, and it got better. My hard day got better. He invested in me and I was feeling better. At the same time, I was investing in him because I was raising our family and our kids. It's mutually beneficial for me to reach out to him for support and for him to invest back in me. It's not that I received and he gave. It's that we received and we gave. But I'm starting to feel better. And he was at work and he said, do you want me to come home? And I said, no, I'm better now. Thank you for talking with me. I've got it. And he said, I respect your decision. I said, thank you. And I meant it. I was good. I had a plan and I started facilitating my plan and getting through the day and doing what I was going to do. And it was going to be great. And about 30 minutes later, I opened the bathroom door and my husband walks through it. I was like, what are you doing here? He's like, I came home because you need more. You need more love. You need more time. I'm here because I want to take care of you. And I was like, you didn't respect my decision. He's like, no, I didn't. That's the kind of lack of respect I want in the church we dream of. I want us to disrespect each other's boundaries to be loved less. When someone comes to you and says, no, I don't need any more love, I will not be receiving any more love from you. You see what I'm saying? Obviously, it was completely loving for him to come and give me that extra space. We should honor each other's boundaries. But what I'm talking about is generosity. If someone is resisting our generosity, I want us to nudge just a skosh further and see if they will take a little bit more, a little more love, a little more trust, a little bit more connection. Because we're always going to cut ourselves off. We're always going to be like, oh, that's enough. Thanks. I'm good. I'm sufficient. But in the kingdom of heaven, the cup overflows. So he came home to invest even more in me. And so not only did I have enough that day, but I ended up having more than enough, more than I needed. And what did I do with my extra? Because I had been exhausted at the beginning of the day, okay at the middle of the day. By the end of the day, I have a little bit of extra. Did I store up that extra and save it for myself? No. I immediately reinvested it back into my husband. Immediately reinvested it. There's a banking metaphor here that someone who knows about investing can explain better than me. But money that's just sitting in a bank account is doing nothing. Energy that's not invested in building relationship is doing nothing. We were created for relationship. So if I have extra, I'm going to invest it. I'm going to invest it back into my marriage, back into my relationship. That's a scary thing to do. If you're not used to people investing their extra in you, if you're not used to knowing when it's appropriate to invest and when it's not. And so while these three feelings are going to happen as we're healing, there is actually a way that we can figure out what we're supposed to do next. I don't believe that there's one recipe for how we can build the church we dream of, because we as a collective, we in the context of my world is different than we in the context of your world. I don't think I'll ever be able to give you instructions for how to build the church that your we dreams of. However, God has built into us some signals that can give us custom lifetime instructions for our personal walk with God, our personal communities, and those signals can guide us towards building the church that we dream of. And I want to talk to you about how you can get those tools. Last summer, I did a blog series called Emotions as Messengers, and Sam read those blogs and she thought they were fantastic. She really hyped me up. They poured something into her, so she turned around and invested that right back into me. If you remember from the beginning of the season, my husband and I had been in Mexico last summer. We had been a part of an incredible mission trip. There were lots of other people reading those Emotions as Messengers blogs at the time, and I got a lot of feedback that people liked them and they felt like they explained emotions to them in a way that they had not ever heard them explained before. So this summer I wanted to revisit the Emotions as Messengers series because I feel like I've grown so much in the last year. I feel like we all have. And I wanted to do another pass on this topic. I wanted to do an Emotions as Messengers series on the podcast. So I was taking the blogs that I'd already written and doing some touch-ups and some editorial notes on them to turn them into podcasts. And as I did, I just started writing and writing and writing because I was reading them and I was like, oh, these are nowhere near the level of what I would want to communicate today. I need to add this and I need to change this and all these things that I was reading. And within about an hour, I had written 2 chapters of a book. So for the last 2 months-ish, I have put my head down and I have written an entire book called Emotions as Messengers. And the goal of this book is a faith-based guide to understanding your emotions so you can reconnect with yourself, God, and your communities. I didn't start this podcast, The Church We Dream Of, and expect to get to a place where I would say, hey, there's a book now. Because the Emotions as Messengers journey actually started when I was sitting in a 100-year-old building waiting for my daughter to finish her ballet class. I started thinking about emotions. What is their purpose? What is their role? And I started taking notes on my phone in this little tiny waiting room. That was a couple of years ago. And I'm realizing that as I've been chewing on the question, what's next? What's next for the church that we dream of? We can't just talk all day about problems. We have to do something. I'm realizing that in order to do something, we're going to have a map. We're going to need information. And I've been struggling with the fact that there's no way that I can give you information that's specific for you. But then I realized that your emotions can become that map. And I know that sounds like a crazy idea, but I break down step by step how emotions are messages from God that give us a roadmap for how we can build the church that we dream of. The link for this book is in the show notes of wherever you're watching this, and it is available for pre-order, and it will be officially published on July 7th, which is my 35th birthday. So as my birthday present to myself, I'm giving you all a book. And I will say that Sam has read the first 2 chapters and she said it was incredible. So it passes the SAM test, and that's what matters. It's really exciting. It's not exciting that I'm publishing a book. That's exciting on a personal note. But on a corporate level, I couldn't orchestrate the pieces that would get us to this conversation. I couldn't orchestrate you finding this podcast or the domino effect that led us to, hey, there's a book. You can pre-order it today. And when you read this book, you will learn everything that I have been studying about emotions in my personal, professional, and faith life for the last 5 years that has led me to the place of hope that I have for the church that we dream of. The concepts of that book are what caused me to start this conversation in the first place. And I realized that I never actually explained them to you, how to feel, how to sit with your emotions, what to do with the information they give you, what the information they give you means. And so I wrote it all down, packaged it all up, nice and tidy. So in about 5 hours, you can learn everything that you need to know about this. You can become an expert. You can have all the information that you need to start clarifying the path that God has in front of you for what does it mean to build the church we dream of in your we community. I want to thank you for being on this journey. I'm very excited for what the future could look like. I'm excited for how far we've come. I hope that you can look back from this moment and the different episodes that you've listened to and see yourself transforming. I hope that you've inherited knowledge from this podcast up to this point that is so organically yours now that you don't even remember that I said it. Because to me, it does not matter if you credit me or you remember that I said it. To me, the most incredible sign of success is when you internalize a message so deeply that you think it's your own, and then you start sharing it with the world. And then it becomes a part of your community, and your whole community thinks that it is a part of them. Because all of the things that have influenced me, I have internalized and thought they were my own ideas. But at the end of the day, we're all just sharing and contributing towards the effort of being more whole, being more connected, being more united. Building a trauma-informed church requires knowing how to feel our emotions. And I know there's a lot of curriculums out there around emotions that are very good. I haven't found one that covers emotions the way that I do in this book. So I hope that you will take the time to pre-order, set aside some time in the middle of July to read it and let it transform your relationship with your emotion. In the next episode, we're going to start unpacking the first 3 chapters of the book, which talk about the original message of emotions, how that message gets interrupted, and something that I call the redacted message. So I look forward to talking to you again.